Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Cody Scroby, and welcome back to another episode of Homebrew. Today I'm going to show you how you can make your own hard cider right at home. Now, I know I covered this in one of my other homebrew episodes, maybe episode 3 or so, but we kind of mixed it in with the how to brew an all-grain batch of beer. So we went back and we were looking at exactly how we made that cider because it was extremely good. And we liked it a lot. Everybody that tried it liked it a lot. And we wanted to try to recreate that same cider. So we went back to that video and we had to skim through it a whole bunch and go forward and back. And it took us a long time to find the information that we wanted. So I thought I would make this video as a standalone. This is how you make your own hard cider at home. It is extremely easy. You only need a few things. To start off, you will need a 6.5 gallon carboy. This one's glass. It can be glass or plastic, whatever you can get. Also, this one we're going to use later. This is a 5 gallon one. So, first, I got my carboy here, and it's full of water, and this stuff right here called PBW. And you just put a scoop of that in there, fill it up with hot water, and let it sit. And anything that's in there, it will basically dissolve it. I mean, there was some crap in the bottom and it was kind of dirty. It's nice and clean now. That's been sitting for like a week now because we were going to do this last week. Then you'll want to put some sanitizer in there. I have some Star San right here. And this stuff is super easy. Basically, you just squeeze it. You squeeze it kind of hard. And anyway, it'll fill this up till you get to your, what does it say? It says 1 ounce. Then you'll dump it in there, fill it up with water, and you'll be sanitized. Now, I'm not going to go into sanitizing too much because I talked about it in other videos. Super important. Everything that comes in contact with it needs to be sanitized. I have a refractometer, which will show you your specific gravity. I have my drill from work. I have some W yeast. This is an American Ale. WLP 001 is the same yeast in a different brand. This is a smack pack is what it's called. There's like a little nutrient pack inside there. And you break it and you shake it up and then it'll start to expand. It's kind of like a yeast starter basically. This here is a hydrometer. It is basically the same thing as the refractometer. It's just a different way to do it. I have my funnel. I have just a basic turkey baster, which I use to take a sample, and then you can squirt it in here. I have this, I'm not sure what to call it. It's like a paddle. That's what the drill is for. Put it in the drill. I'll show you that later. It will basically aerate or provide oxygen for your yeast to ferment your cider. And I have 6 gallons of Sprouts organic apple juice. Now, it's very important, not that it needs to be organic. The most important thing here, it is pasteurized, but that it does not have any types of preservatives because the preservatives will kill your yeast. Alright, so I got this thing full of sanitizer right now. And I have this side of the sink blocked off. Basically, I'm going to fill this one up, finish dumping it in here, so that I have sanitizer in order to sanitize anything that I'm going to touch the cider with. Alright, I got my sink full of sanitizer here. There are bubbles left in the carboy, but don't worry about those. I was super worried about those when I first started doing this, and they don't matter. They just go away, they pop. So basically, I am sanitizing my entire funnel, and these things aren't super expensive or anything. I picked this one up for, well, I guess it was 13 bucks, but whatever. I've had the same one forever, and then we used it for something and it kind of messed it up a little bit, so I got rid of it. So I just bought this one yesterday. I've got a screen in there So let's dump our cider in. Now on the bottom of your cider here, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see it, but there's like sediment at the bottom. You're going to want to shake that up and get as much of it in there as you can. Alright, I've got 5 gallons in there, and it is right there. So really we kind of want it to be like right where this curve starts to happen, so maybe about right there. I mean, that's why I buy 6 gallons, because really we're only making a 5-gallon batch. But if you only put in 5 gallons, you're only going to end up with like 4 3/4 gallons when you're done, because you lose a little bit when you transfer to that one, and when you transfer to the keg or bottle, you always lose a little bit every time you transfer it. So I put in like 5 1/4. I don't know if I'd call it 5 1/2 gallons, but I'm gonna put a little bit of this one in there too. All right, so that's how much we have left in that 1 gallon. It's not quite half, but as you can see here, we're just starting to hit this curve, and you need this space here, because when it ferments, it's gonna bubble up, and it may even come out the top and make a huge mess, which is, I mean, it's a mess, but that means you have really good fermentation going, and you're gonna have really good cider. So something else that I forgot to mention that you're going to need for this particular cider that I am making is you're going to need 2 ounces of the hops of your choice. These are the ones that we use. When we made the original one, we just kind of cleaned out our extra hops we had in the freezer. Well, we don't have any anymore, so we went and bought some of our favorite types of hops. Simcoe is one of my favorite types of hops. Amarillo is a nice subtle one. It's not as strong. As you see right here, the AA is alpha acids, 8.7%. This one here is 12.5. So this one's going to be a little more bitter. It kind of tells a little bit about it. Piney aroma, hint of citrus, clean bitterness. And this 1 ounce was $3. The Amarillo, flowery, spicy, and citrus with orange. Now you're not going to taste like a definite, ooh, this tastes like an orange. They're just kind of subtle hints of flavor, profiles, I suppose. And then I have this here, which is lemongrass, and I got it from a spice shop, savory spice shop. I don't know if that's a local Colorado thing. Anyway, we're going to use this lemongrass also, and all this stuff is going to go in this secondary fermenter next weekend. So I have not put the yeast in yet, because this thing here, after you break the nutrient pack, it says on here at least 3 hours. It has to sit at 70 degrees for at least 3 hours. And I just did it about a half hour ago. So I need to wait for that, and then I'll bring it back in when we're ready to continue. Alright, so now that our yeast has started, it's been 3.5 hours, but look how big it is now. Yeah, there's my turkey selfie too. Anyway, so what we're going to do next is we need to take a sample of this stuff here. I'm going to remove my airlock, stick it in there. So this is where we're going to use our turkey baster. It's all sanitized, so we're just going to stick it in here. Take a sample. Which I could have done this with the other stuff too, but this is everything. This is exactly how it's going to be. Alright, so the way you read this thing, let's see if we can see. You want to see what is sitting right at the line. So it's been a long time since I've read one of these, so 1.05. Every one of these marks on the side is 2. So 2, 4, 4 or 6. So 1.054 or 1.056. So basically what you're going to want to do, that is the specific gravity. What you're going to want to do is, after it's done fermenting, you do this again, and your difference, it's going to sit lower. So let's say it was 1.000. So the difference between 1.0 and 1.05 is 0.05. And I don't exactly remember, but I want to say that means it's 5%, right? The difference between what it started as and what it ended as when it's done fermenting is the difference of how much sugar it started with and how much sugar is left and has been created into alcohol. Anyway, so that's how you use that thing. The other thing you can do is you can get one of these refractometers. Now I don't think there's a price tag on this thing anymore. I don't remember how much it costs. It is more expensive. Alright, so let's take a sample of this stuff. Like, we don't need very much. You just need a couple drops, a little bit on the lens here. Then you take this and you look through here. 1.050 on the right there. So we're pretty close. And then on the left is brick scale percent. I don't know exactly how to read that. So anyway, 1.050 is what we're starting at. And you have to take this at 20 degrees Celsius, which I believe is around 70 degrees Fahrenheit or so. So really, you just take it, stick it in your drill, tighten it up, stick it in there, and then you let her rip. But basically that's what you're trying to do. So look how foamy it is now. We just put that much oxygen in there. So basically what it's doing, it's just creating a whirlpool. It's sucking the air down. Yeah, look at all that in there. So the yeast are going to love that. So now, let's add our yeast. So there it is in there. You can kind of see, there's our nutrient bag. And there's our yeast. So we'll just dump it right in there. Then you take your airlock, stick it back on there. Make sure this thing has something in it. It has sanitizer in it right now. You can use water. I prefer to use sanitizer. I don't know if there's any specific reason why. But there it is. I got a little thermometer on there too. And it's showing it right at about 74, 75 degrees. So anyway, that's going to be it for today until we transfer it here later. By the way, you're going to want to put this somewhere cool and dark. So you want it to be 70 degrees, 68 degrees. It's going to gain some temperature while it's fermenting. So I'm going to put it in the basement for a week and then we'll bring it back up here and we'll transfer it. And we'll continue that way. So right here you can see I am sanitizing the siphoning hose. Now what you're going to want to do is get some of the sanitizer in there, stick one side into the fermenter that you want to transfer from, turn it so that you can see where the hose is because you don't want it too low and you don't want to suck up the stuff on the bottom. Stick the other side in the one you want to transfer to and let her go. When it gets low enough, you're going to want to tip it a little bit so that you can still get some of the cider but leave the sediment at the bottom. Now pay attention to the one you're transferring to and you're going to see why here in a second. See, I was watching up here just to make sure I didn't go too high or too low, and as I was doing that, we had an overflow. So just grab a towel and clean it up. Make sure you move your mat out of the way. It's really all you can do. Next, we're going to dump out the old one. I have my attachment connected to the sink, which when I stick on there is going to trigger like a jet. We're going to rinse it out. Now I am adding the lemongrass, which this is all that we had, was like a dry version of it. The first time we made this, we had a paste, which worked much better. You can just kind of squirt it in there. This stuff, I don't know why I grabbed the small funnel. but it got plugged up. I tried to push it through. Didn't really work. I got my big funnel out. Whoop. It worked, but not very well. So now we are adding the hops. Now, I like to do this before I transfer it, before I siphon it, but we forgot. So we're adding it later. It doesn't really matter. I like to do it first because then it's in there. You're transferring on top of it. You don't have to worry about space like this. So what I did is, while it was sitting in this fermenter, the secondary, from, every day or every other day, whenever you walk by it or whatever, just kind of shake it up. I just took it from the top and kind of made a swirling motion with it. It mixed in the hops and the lemongrass, and it let all of this CO2 that you can see right there, it let it all kind of escape, because it all kind of, it traps it down there. You can see it kind of sitting underneath. And when you shake it up, it really lets that stuff out, and it mixes up the hops and the lemongrass very nicely. So this here is a week later. I have now transferred it into a third fermenter and left all that lemongrass and hops and other sediment behind. I do not know what happened to that footage. I was looking for it and I cannot find it. But basically, it was the same thing you just saw, me transferring it, siphoning it from the secondary fermenter into this tertiary fermenter. What I'm doing right now is taking another sample to see what our gravity is. It is at 1.000, which I believe it started at 1.05. So it is right at about 5% alcohol. Now I am taking another sample for my hydrometer. And we're just because I can check it against the other hydrometer. Wait, what's this one called? I don't remember. Anyway, they're both going to tell you the same thing. It's just a different way to get the same reading. And here you can see, I can barely see, 1.015. This one is reading slightly higher. It does have to be about 70 degrees. So it might be a little bit cold for this one. I don't know. I think this one's a little bit more sensitive to temperature than the other one is. And now we are transferring into the keg. It is actually 2 weeks later now, and that is only because we had some things going on the weekends that didn't allow us time to do this. Leaving it sit for an extra week is not going to hurt anything. If anything, it might allow it to ferment a little more, and it'll get more dry, a little more alcoholic, but it's not going to go bad. You can just leave it sitting there. So we're transferring into the keg. This is a 5-gallon corny keg. So here you will want to hook up your CO2. It's going to go down this line and into this carbonation stone. I do not remember the specifics about it. I want to say it's like a 2 micron. It's been so many years, I don't remember. I've had this thing for a long time. So you just stick it in there, put the lid on, lock it down. So we're going to want to connect the CO2 to the lid and the tap side. My lines are a little bit long. I need to cut them. To the outside of the keg. Go ahead and stick it in your kegerator. And this is not going to carbonate very well until it gets cold. Until it gets close to 35 degrees, 40 degrees, it will not take carbonation very well. And we have our 2 taps here. I set this thing up years ago myself. It's kind of like a 3/4 size refrigerator, and it is perfect for these corny kegs. Out of the carbonation stone, the CO2 bleeds out so slowly that it does not have enough pressure in it yet. It's been like a day later, and there's a tiny bit of carbonation in there. It's not enough. So this is basically our finished product. I'm going to leave that carbonation stone in there for another day probably. You just kind of try a little bit here and there. After a day, get yourself a tiny glass of it. Taste it, see how it feels in your mouth, see if you like the carbonation. When you do get to a point where you think it's perfect, go ahead and pull that carbonation stone off of there and hook the CO2 up to the inside of the keg. This is how you make
Homebrew Cider. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you guys did, please don't forget to hit the like button for me. Leave me your thoughts on it down below in the comments, and you can also subscribe to the channel for possibly more homebrew. If you guys want to see something specific, let me know. But definitely other videos. We'll see you next time. Later, guys.